Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for joining. It's a great pleasure to be here. My name is Abby, Senior UX Researcher at Celonis. I moved to Munich from Paris, April this year, so still very new to the city. And I'm super excited to be part of this community. Very happy to find this community, actually. Maybe a little bit introduction about myself. I come from a computer science background and did a PhD in human-computer interaction. Outside work, I'm a diver and have definitely dived more places than I worked. I'm also a aerial practitioner. So if you're in Munich and would like to give it a try, please feel free to reach out to me. It's a lot of fun. So you can reach out to me not only about research related topics, but we can also share interests if you have those. So the session today, I'd like to share some of my experiences around the question, how do you handle it when people are skeptical of the value of UX research? I can see half of you, so raise your hand if you've come across a similar situation or maybe react to it so that I know what's the status quo here. I can see some hands. So the rest, you guys are doing fine. Good for you. All right, so obviously, I hope you will never experience such a situation. Unfortunately, depending on the UX maturity of the company you are working at, this situation is not uncommon. So in fact, this question came up when I was preparing for our recruiting process since we're hiring, just FYI. So how do you handle it when people are skeptical of the value of UX research? Or even worse, the value of UX? I feel like this is really speaking to me because this is the battle that I've been fighting in the past 7 years, both during my PhD thesis and at the moment at Celonis, which we will get into in a moment. I don't know about Germany, but in France, there's this strong notion of, well, basically this meme explaining it nicely, that there's a strong notion of math, engineering, computer science. People turn away from UX, HCI, or design and think they're not science. So during my PhD, I did a lot of supervisor management since I had 3 brilliant professors, which you can tell from their Google Scholar citations. My main supervisor is a mathematician who has actually never heard about HCI, human-computer interaction, before. So what he expected from the thesis was math. And my second supervisor is an HCI researcher, but with a strong computer science background. So what he expected was code. And then the third supervisor was a psychologist, experimental psychologist. So you can guess what he expected was controlled experiment, because, well, for psychologists, qualitative research is fluffy and all over the places. It's like above the clouds, over the rainbow. We don't know what those people are doing. So thanks to the 3 brilliant supervisors, I did math, I coded, I did controlled experiments with counterbalanced conditions, statistical analysis, and all of that. Don't get me wrong, I totally enjoyed my thesis and it was well received in the university and the HCI community. However, my diploma is written mathematics and informatics because human-computer interaction doesn't exist for a doctoral degree in France. I'm not sure what's the situation in Germany around, and I hope the situation will change. So my main supervisor, the mathematician, also changed his attitude throughout the years. In my first year, he would literally tell me that HCI is not science. He's like, I have no idea what you guys doing. I do math and you should do math. HCI is not science. Second year, he started saying, HCI is soft science. I'm not sure what he's comparing it to, as if math is a hard science and HCI is just soft science. But after my graduation, he actually continued to collaborate with other HCI professors and is now supervising even more HCI PhD students. So I was very proud of this change. And of course, that was a lot of brainwashing. And I will share some of the techniques together with the situation at Celonis. So speaking of Celonis, unfortunately, the UX landscape at the moment kind of falls into the same category. Engineering, yes. UX, no. In case you have not heard about Celonis before, it was founded in 2011 in Munich, with now headquarters in both Munich and New York City. We have 16 offices around the globe with 2,000 employees, and is named, well, the most valuable startup in Germany, as well as the market leader for process discovery and mining. We have more than 300 people working in product and engineering, actively developing the software, but we're at the moment 18 in the UX chapter, being responsible for the entire product. So among the 18 people, we have 1 lead, 12 designers, 3 architects, and I see some colleagues here, 1 design thinking coach, hello Mohit, and 1 researcher, which is me. So I'm actually the first researcher at Celonis. The UX culture at Celonis is not very uniform, so it depends a lot on the squad. If you happen to be in a squad with, so we have this Spotify structure with chapters and squads, etc. So if you happen to be in a squad with UX-oriented PM and experienced developers, fire, great. If not, you will be in a constant battle. So there's also this legacy problem. Since Celonis was successful without a single UX person in the past, the engineers were designing and implementing the product. So some of them still have this mentality that the best UX is no UX. So the question is, how do we change their mind? Also, since we don't have enough UX people who owns the UX topics, a lot of times PMs are also doing UX research, and some of them are really asking biased questions such as, you like this feature, right? And where is the UX roadmap? How do we make sure we have dedicated resources? What about UX metrics and established UX processes and best practices? So in the next few slides, I will be sharing with you some of the lessons I learned from brainwashing my PhD supervisor to change his mind about HCI, which I then also use at the moment at Celonis to communicate UX values at both squad level and company level. Maybe you're already doing it, great, happy to share and exchange experiences. Maybe you haven't done it yet, but also happy to have a chat. Do you have any questions so far? I like really to make this a little bit more interactive so that I'm not talking to the screen myself. So far, so good? Okay, I see nodding. All right. So the very first important thing that I learned is to let people experience it firsthand. Well, similar to us researchers, that we need to talk to users and observe their behavior firsthand rather than reading a report or hearing a summary of user behavior from someone else. To communicate UX values, the first step is really to let people experience it. My PhD supervisor, for example, was always the pilot for every prototype I made, every experiment I carried out. So at the moment at Celonis, I also invite the PMs, engineers to try out the interactive prototypes to get a sense of how users would actually use it, especially if there are several design alternatives. Also for every usability test or user interview, I also invite PMs, engineers, other stakeholders to observe so that they get some firsthand user contact and observe how users would use the product they develop. So this is very important because without seeing it with their own eyes or interacted it firsthand, it would be really hard to lay a common ground. Second, people love numbers. We UX researchers have an enormous amount of interest in human behavior. We dig into details, both people's attitude, behavior, beliefs, but not everyone has the same amount of interest about humans. So in order to communicate UX values, we also need to speak to the audience, to their interest, and also have empathy for them. So in this case, numbers really work. For example, For a usability test, I always have both quantitative and qualitative measures, and I have a TLDR version for all the stakeholders. Everyone knows what is a TLDR, or is it just me who spends a lot of time on Reddit? Everyone knows what is a TLDR? So too long, didn't read. All right, so the point is people love TLDR because if they're able to see and understand the content in a glance, they would find it valuable to sit through an entire presentation, if that's a presentation. For example, in this usability test, well, task success rate 80%, time spent 20 minutes, on average perceived usability 80%, compared to 68% last time. So this is the type of information that everyone wants and needs to know, because, for example, task success is great because then the stakeholders can translate that into sales, and sales generate revenue. Time on the task is also important because every second worth a couple of 100,000 euros. And then for specific usability issues and design strategies, we can communicate to the PMs and engineers. Another example to show numbers, which also increases visibility, is to have a UX dashboard. I'm not sure if this is too small for everyone to see, and I don't know if you could see my cursor. So basically on the right, we have a calendar view that highlights the days we're in contact with users. And in the middle, we have the number of UX activities being carried out, how many users are involved, how many team members are involved, to highlight the fact that UX research is really a team sport. We also benchmark usability tests. And if we go back to the left corner, we also have a Jira view that outlines how many design tickets we have and what is the completion percentage. In this way, the whole team is aligned and is aware of UX efforts. I see some comments in the chat. I'm not sure if this is the moment, or should we continue?
They are probably about the too long didn't read reference.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, at least you learned something tonight. TLDR, remember, very important. All right. Something that is also proven working well in every situation, political, religious, corporate culture, you name it, is brainwashing. So we're also going into this direction. Most people know, well, to be honest, most people know UX as a buzzword and think we should have this magic in the organization, but a lot of them really have troubles executing the concept of user-centered rather than product-centered. So no matter how many times the development teams agree about putting the user first, they simply cannot do it. Well, we don't blame them because it takes education and years of trainings to have this mentality. Therefore, a part of our role is also to educate people to help them make this subtle but vital shift in thinking. So on the one hand side, we are giving talks at the squad level on what is UX research and how can we really make it a team sport. And people actually really enjoyed them and were really interested because they didn't know, but now they know. And so they really appreciate the effort and that they get to know and understand more from our perspective and try to work out a collaboration mode. On the other hand, UX chapter also started brainwashing the whole company by talking about what is design done by a colleague here, and also designing interactive systems and user experience, basically a HCI 101. You never know who was there in this company-wide talks and what kind of impact that might have. But last week I received a message from a PM that I've never met before, actually. She wrote me and said that the talk really inspired her, and now she wants to know more about UX. And that really made my day. It was very unexpected, but really made my day. So given the fact that we don't have enough researchers to take ownership, I also started crafting a sort of Celonis UX research savoir-faire, which means how to do certain things. So there is a detailed description and best practices for each method so that anyone can use this material. This is something far away from being complete, of course. And in each session, we once again brainwash people that we need to take a user-centered approach so that even if we don't have enough UX researchers at the moment, the PMs can still carry out research activities, but in a more rigorous way. We also try to make sure that UX values are communicated starting from onboarding onward. So we have crafted a 4-week plan for every new joiner so that they really go in there, map their territory, help the team understand users and the importance of different UX activities. Of course, these different methods we're using right now are not exhaustive. We're also trying to create UX roadmap for each quarterly planning, define success metrics with stakeholders and keep tracking these metrics to show the impact of UX, which is also very important in communicating the values. And also where, as I mentioned earlier, that we're also building a UX research team. So yeah, to wrap up, my experience tells me that people's mindset cannot be changed overnight. It will take time and effort to change attitude, belief, behavior. Be patient and keep trying step by step in communicating these different values in our role, if this is the situation you are facing now. And this includes let people experience it firsthand, show numbers, increase visibility of our work, raise awareness of UX research and UX in general. It will be a slow process, but it's rewarding, not only the end, but also the process. For example, when I saw my mathematician PhD supervisor went from HCI is not science to HCI is soft science to looking for PhD students in HCI, or when I saw the attitude of PMs and engineers in my squad changing slowly over time, and now start asking questions such as what users would do in this case. It really feels good. So all in all, I hope this is a situation you will never have to face in your career. But if you do, I hope some of the techniques will be helpful. Thank you very much for your attention. I will be happy to hear your feedback and exchange some ideas.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you so much for sharing. We see some virtual steps here. Do we have any questions? You can use the chat or also just turn on your microphone and ask directly. So we have a conversation here. Or other experiences. Sorry, one.
It was me too quick. I do have one question to kick this off. I like this dashboard that you showed. Can you show a bit like how do you use that? Like, do you update this like manually, or and where is it shown in the company? Like, how can people see that and where?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. At the moment, the dashboard is done in Miro, so it's updated manually. We do this, or I try to do this bi-weekly, and also share that with the squad. Most likely on a weekly basis, just to remind them, okay, this is the thing, this is the effort that we've done in the past week, and this is where we're at to sort of start out the week. So we do have dailies every morning, and I tend to just share the updates Monday morning so that we're aligned for the week. But later on, we now everyone gets to used to that. Later, we'll probably move into a more automatic tool so that we don't need to do this manually.
Thank you. Do we have more questions or other experiences on?
Or if you have come across such a situation and you've done some other, or if you have other techniques, also happy to hear these.
Hey, it's me, Florian. May I have a question?
Of course.
Just thank you very much for that talk. It was very interesting. I think it all has to do a bit with the maturity of the company. And I think that your company has already reached a certain level of maturity as you have a dedicated role for UX research. I'm coming from the agency side with a research agency. So my problem is that we have a lot of companies that still do not see the issue of requiring UX research at all. They don't have roles for it. They don't have the necessity. So how would you convince such a company to start doing UX research?
That's a great question. Thank you very much. Is there anyone doing any type of research at all in these companies? Because before I transitioned to the role, the UX designers or the PMs were doing research.
Yeah, sometimes, well, it depends a bit on the company we're working with. Some companies have dedicated roles. Sometimes they are marketeers. Sometimes they are classic traditional market researchers. All depends a bit, but yeah, I just wanted to hear your thoughts, how to get started with the philosophy of doing research, being empirical.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so I joined Celonis also as a senior UX designer. And although ever since I joined, I've mostly been doing research. And I think there needs to be, I mean, it's always this either bottom up or top down approach, right? If you have someone, you have a CPO, you have a director that comes in with years of experience and tell you that, okay, we need a researcher, job's done. Going bottom up is a little bit more difficult. So I think you need people who have this mentality of we need research because we need evidence. Otherwise, the designs, not necessarily designs, but the product, the development is just based on assumptions. So you need people who dig into details and provide this evidence that could be done by designers, could be done by PMs, could be done by anyone in the team. But someone needs to surface that mentality up, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you. For another question.
Hello, this is Selva. Can I have a question, please?
Please.
Of course.
So my question is about UX research maturity at a larger scale company. So right now, Celonis is the most valuable company or startup in Germany, and the entire company is almost like 10 years old, but the UX research is still evolving. So from what I saw in your dashboard, it seems like the UX research practices are mostly evaluative. So there are the design or UX experiences that are already have been shipped, and you are evaluating each week and presenting maybe how you are tweaking the experiences in order to get more engagement or more retention. And then there could be more advanced stage where you have like a product discovery that is led by research. When do you feel comfortable initiating that kind of studies, which are more extensive and requires even more resources?
That is, again, a great question. I think I might surprise you, but we are recently, it's correct that Celonis has been around for 10 years. And for a company of 2,000 people, we're 18. And I will surprise you that we're recently doing persona workshops. We're recently defining who are our users, because we sell well being in this, being as the unicorn company, basically. If you come from a niche, how to say, domain, and the tool really provides the needs that people have never seen before, because who likes SAP, right? If you provide a tool that is just slightly better than SAP, people would buy it. So Celonis has been selling well, but we actually don't know who are our users. We have no idea what they're doing with the tool. And that's the exercise we started doing recently, thanks to a lot of different, well, both top-down and bottom-up voices. So I think we are still not there yet. We're actually trying to fixing our product as it is. When it comes to, you know, the wider range of research activities, or really rigorous or large scale, that type of thing, we're still not there yet.
Okay, so when would you feel like you have reached a threshold where you are comfortable introducing that kind of initiative to the team? Is it like when there is significant increase in engagement, for example, or you have managed to reach to a segment of market that you weren't able to reach before, and then you feel more comfortable, say UX research could actually discover products in that domain or that sphere?
I think here we probably need to distinguish customers and users. So we have a lot of customers because we're in B2B, and those who buy the product are not the ones who use them. That's why we are selling very well. But only until recently, we realized that we'll also need to have a look at how the users are using the product, because we need to take user experience into account in the development. So when it reaches the point where research can actually influence the direction of product development, I think we first of all need perhaps a bigger team. So we also need to scale the UX team in general, scale it up and bring in more researchers. Because right now everyone is very much cramped in their day-to-day business, because we're just not enough for the needs of different squads.
All right, sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Do we have more questions? Still have some time.
I might also have a question, even that we work together from day to day.
Go for it.
What is your feeling from your experience, you know, when you have teams that just trying to do research, so they start by themselves, which I sometimes let them run a little bit, because then they, you know, develop a motivation by themselves. Not that I forced them to do the research, but they feel the need and they also see insights. But yeah, sometimes they use questions like, look what I did. What do you think? This is great, isn't it? But still, like, where do you feel you should let run people and just explore a little bit? When do you feel it's a good time to jump in and get this more on a, I would say, scientific foundation?
That's also a very great question, especially at the moment where really just not enough people. So we have to let it go from time to time, because you can't just work on every project. And in some cases, you just have to let the PMs or even the interns or whoever has time and resources to carry out research activities. But that's why we have these savoir-faire sessions. So we really try to make sure that if they do it, we do it as rigorous as possible, because whatever they find from the research activities would be fed back into the product. And if that's the research part is not done properly, well, that will obviously influence the product. So I think we need a team. We need to really spread the news and let people know that, hey, look, I really appreciate your effort. And if you could just take 5 to 10 minutes to go through the slides and check out the questions you should ask, you shouldn't ask, that would already be a great start.